All right. Welcome, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between over on Sean Cross. It is currently 11:41 a.m. for me on the 18th of May. It is a Saturday, more specifically, a Saturday morning. I have no idea if I'm planning to get another podcast session figured out this afternoon. People, this weekend, we have a lot of heavy music releasing, and I forgot to tag Pray for Pain in that catalog. But The Last of Lucy from Long Beach, California, a brand new MySpace deathcore band that's really just making the ranks and they're just breaking the chain per se, that being Peacemaker, Florida. They just released their debut EP, First Degree. A lot of heavy hitters on there, and we definitely hope to host them. We have, let's see, I might even have to go on my phone because I know it's on my story. Let's see, Fleshmuller from Madrid, Spain, actually reformed and reincarnated from a prior project that I tried to get on the show, and they're like, yeah, we broke up. And then out of nowhere, they're like, oh, we have a new project though. They released their new album today, so that was really cool to see. Let's see. Trying to think of any others. All I know is there's a lot of fucking heavy. Oh, Pathology from California. They're also releasing this weekend. So shout out to all of the bands that, well, other than Pray for Pain, until further notice, we don't exactly have a session locked in for this weekend. But I wish you all the best of luck with Premiere Weekend. As with any band around the world, the weekend is really where you get your first chunk of streams. That's where you kind of make your next steps as a heavy musician with your next biggest effort. But more specifically, people, tonight or today, tonight for Kevin, today for me, we kind of go full circle. And I can easily say that I'm hosting one of the first ever bands that I found in the slamming brutal death metal or like death groove genre, as Pray for Pain reminds me hella, as I've found other bands in a very similar vein. They remind me hella of Distant Tomb. They remind me of Waking the Cadaver, Sigil, and a couple other artists that we've hosted on this podcast. It is very groovy. It's not exactly just formula, just hate and gore. There's a little bit of fun in there, right? It makes you want to dance. This is Pray for Pain, people. This is, again, one of the first bands I ever found before any of the other deathcore / slam bands that I would eventually find back in the day, including and not limited to, of course, Signs of the Swarm, Shrine of Malice, Organectomy, and then, funnily enough, for the longest time, avoiding bands like Angel Maker because there was so much consistent vocal effort going on that I thought that they were trying to pretend, and I thought that they only had like one vocalist, but they were doing so many takes that it's like there's no way they're going to be able to do this live. Little would I find out later on that there are two vocalists. Not only that, but then, Colton does trietary vocals, I guess you could say, backing vocals. And then, well, the rest of the boys in the band now, including Johnny, also from Carcosa, they also do vocals. So technically, Angel Maker vocally is now a 4-piece band with legends like Johnny joining the lineup. But most importantly, people, Pray for Pain, right? This is a band I found around the same time as Traders as well, I can easily say. Another very, very innovative band for the genre, basically attempting to go as slow as possible with deathcore, but also provide that punch. The thing is, too, Pray for Pain, I would easily say, is one of those bands that has no gimmick bullshit involved in it. They don't strictly go for black and deathcore or Ignite the Church, as fun as that niche is, right? Making music in a healthy way that still opposes the church, opposes organized monotheism in a healthy way, kind of talking, for example, Nithful in the perspective of God about the deep, dark, dirty secrets about the Bible and making it Infant Annihilator heavy. And then, of course, well, you also have bands like Infant Annihilator. But most importantly, kind of recalling upon what would be the first couple bands in deathcore, slamming brutal death metal that I would uncover before myself and find a liking to. Pray for Pain was definitely one of the first. So episode 77, until further notice, with Kevin, the bassist of Pray for Pain, it is definitely a full circle moment for me. It is an awesome opportunity to at least start piecing together the lineup of Pray for Pain, tell their story member by member, even learn a bit about Austria, which is where they're from. And I had no idea that they were from Austria back in the day. I'm like, oh yeah, where are these guys from? Like Florida or some shit? No, they're across the ocean, dude. So, like I said, it is nighttime for Kevin, and they actually just got done with a rehearsal not too long ago. I'm sure that was fun. We'll be learning a little bit about that, of course, and just a day-by-day impression of what it's like to be in a band like Pray for Pain, amongst other things, as I have sent over the questionnaire to Kevin. But today for me, right, it is going to be a very, very prominent, very important session, and we've already had a little bit of a warm-up conversation regarding some things, so we're nice and comfortable, right? We're ready to go. We're ready to get groovy. But most importantly, right, with the new formula that Brandon O'Neill of Vile Revelation introduced to us, I'm wanting to do this as much as possible, which is do a front to back session, listen to the EP, kind of have that content for you guys ready to go over in the Cross Core on Sean Cross, but also for the hell of it, just having the music in the podcast itself, hopefully not getting copyright blocked. And then we'll go ahead and get into Kevin's story, learn about him as a person, and for over on Spotify, the 6,991 monthly listeners. Don't know why that was so difficult to say. Today, our purpose will be to provide you guys as much insight as possible on good old Kevin here. So, starting off, despite our conversation, how are you doing, Kevin?
I'm just thinking about how I can make a copyright claim on a video on YouTube. Or research. No, it's fine. I'm okay. Thank you for the very, very kind words. For the very warm introduction. Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm a bit tired right now, which is justified because it's like almost 9 p.m. at my place. I think it's 12 a.m. at your 12 p.m. at your place almost.
Yes, we're getting there. 11:48 a.m.
Yeah. No, it's fine. We just had rehearsal. Just to introduce myself, as Sean already said, I'm the bassist of the band. I'm in the band now since 2013, actually, when we weren't even called Pray for Pain, because Pray for Pain was formed in, I think, 2015 or something. We used to be a grindcore band before that. And yeah, I do the bass. I do some backing vocals live now. I do a lot of our social media stuff. I'm mostly the booker for us. So basically everything, if you reach out to us, it's very likely that I'm going to respond. So if you ever wanted to talk to me, nobody wants to do that, but basically, yeah. So yeah, it's me behind the whole account mostly. So if you see any shit posts, that's just my very bad take on humor.
Well, I mean, here's the thing too. It's always important to have someone on the team in the band lineup who's willing to be that social battery for the rest of the band. And then therefore, in that way, from a marketing sense and from a sense of consistency for all social media platforms, therefore you are the voice of the band. Yeah. You might not be the main vocalist per se, but in that sense, you end up being the voice for the band, which I'm sure is fun. I'm sure is groovy in the moment because you're the guy who people are like, oh my God, Pray for Pain. Like they actually liked my comment or they replied to my comment. Oh my God. It's like, that would be Kevin.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's us liking it, but it's me actually pressing that button. So, but honestly, I do really want to emphasize on that because it's just an empty sentence. If I don't know if big content creators say that, but it's honestly, if you comment on one of our posts and you say, even if you say shit, I'm like, oh my God, someone actually listened to it. So all the comments, so if anybody's listening here that commented on our post or reached out to us, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, because actually that shit keeps me going. Yeah, that shit is that you get recognized, that you get acknowledged, even if even if it's negative, I'm still very, very happy that some people acknowledge it. It's feedback. and it's worth a lot if you think about you just listed so many bands releasing this weekend. Like you gotta imagine, like those are also very big bands, like especially Pathology. They're huge. And now imagine how many small bands there are. And if you stick out to someone and if someone acknowledges you, that's just an amazing feeling. So right from the start, thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for the invitation, of course.
Yes, of course. So getting started off currently, and I'm sure they'll be fixing it soon. They don't have their EP stream over on Spotify just yet, but if you guys go to their YouTube channel, more specifically youtube.com/PrayForPain6790, that is where the EP will be until they get it uploaded to Spotify. So per se, if you're listening to this, as we do hope to get this podcast released by this weekend, that way we're just keeping the content fresh. Because typically I will try to upload the podcast itself like the day of the release, but I kind of reached out last minute. I think we were just figuring stuff out, and I'm constantly reaching out to bands. Like that's part of the process, right? So it's not going to be perfect, but the important part is getting the band on the show in the first place. It's my most important goal, even if it's kind of chaotic. As per that, we will be starting this session by doing a good old front to back. Listening from front to back, utilizing that good old mosh pit ad-lib, mosh pit dialogue. We will be checking out after so long, a new EP.
It took forever.
Pray for Pain.
It took forever.
It took forever, but I'm sure it's going to be so worth it, dude. Forsaken and Cadaver alone, they're so fucking good. They're so moody, bro. They're so good. So, of course, and therefore, even if that is half of the EP already, like, so fucking what, dude? We're still here to enjoy the music. We're here to enjoy some brand new material from a very underrated band. So, needless to say, let's go ahead and get into that process. I will be actually throwing us over here. As you can see me kind of looking to the right from the camera's perspective. Let's go ahead and look into sharing some audio. Let's go to the Chrome tab. If in case everybody wants to start a podcast and like wants to do something very similar, this is how it works step by step. There's a little share button on the bottom of the screen. In the middle, it's a box with an arrow goes. Whoop. You got to click on that. There's a Chrome tab section, and at the top, especially if you're doing it the exact same way I'm doing, it will be YouTube with the band name. Blah 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 blah. Make sure to share tab audio, and then boop, share. So oh yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
God damn. That was good. Oh my God. That was
Yeah, you seemed energized.
yes, I am. Oh, that was so nice to listen to. God damn. So, as per the front to back formula, I will be doing a brief review and then we can go ahead and jump into our podcast. Lyrical rating, I would say don't really have one just yet because we don't really know what's lyrically going on as we usually do. So, until we go under the skin, we kind of have to leave that neutral. So, we'll go ahead and jump right over to the vocal rating. Andy, and is it Andy or Andrew? I forgot.
Just say Andy. It's fine.
Okay.
Like in German, it would be Andreas, but I don't want to do that to you, so just say Andy.
Andreas.
Andreas.
Andreas. Okay, that's
yeah,
cool.
but we all just call him Andy. Nobody
Right.
calls him Andreas.
Fair. So Andy, he came back strong with this EP after so long of getting material out. Not to kind of put my fist into that and just like, you guys took too long. But needless to say, since the last EP that I listened to by them, the latest work, the latest effort that they put out, I can definitely hear and tell there was a lot of improvement, mainly with articulation. Of course, he still sustained his very, very important, very distinguishable slam elements that predate most of the other bands in the same vein of music that I would find later on, right? He kind of introduced me to that lower spectrum, like, how is he going so low? How is he getting so dirty? But I can still hear what he's trying to say. So vocal efforts, I would give a fat 10 out of 10. Instrumentals, genre-radically speaking, this EP, I think, is Pray for Pain's way of embracing even more groove in their music while still keeping that heavier aspect of it too. So there's a balance. And in this case, Pray for Pain is one of those projects that embraces that balance in one of the heaviest subgenres in the world, right? They sustain their groove, but they also have plenty of blast beats. They have plenty of just sound system annihilating blast beats and double bass, which I love to see. And needless to say, you saw how energized I was. So it kept me interested the entire time. It was heavy the entire time, but there was still room for ambience. And it's definitely something I want to accomplish musically one day. So I'll give the instrumental, the John Erratic rating, a 10 out of 10 as well. As far as the EP cover, this definitely is fascinating. It has a lot of sci-fi elements to it, and of course, the name itself being Species. One can only start asking themselves questions, especially one like myself. It's like, what's going on? Why is it called Species? Why is there this tower of flesh, and then there are aliens kind of poking out from it? But not only that, but it seems that whoever this character is at the epicenter of the EP cover, he's underground, it seems. Maybe he's even in the Hollow Earth or some parasitic alien version of Hollow Earth. There's a bunch of questions to be asked, and that's always good with album or EP art to me, is when the art itself intrigues you enough and you're trying to figure out how the art and the music itself connect. So 10 out of 10. Overall rating, well, simply said, this EP, Species, is, I'm sure, a long time coming, and I'm sure we'll also learn about why there was such a gap in between the last EP back in 2014 and this one. But needless to say, it was worth the wait. And not only that, but it was worth the time it took for me getting first into this type of music, starting a YouTube channel back in 2020, building a platform, and now having the artist respectively on the podcast itself. Full circle moment here, ladies and gentlemen. So it's absolutely worth the wait. I would recommend that anybody listen to this and wait in great anticipation for whatever their next full-length effort could be, whether it be standalone singles or, alluding to a bigger effort, as all bands have to do from a marketing standpoint eventually. But that will be the end of the front to back session. Whoop. And now we get into the actual podcast. I can only say that I was really, really energized by that music, and also I got a new mod people, so I'm back into the vaping game apparently. I'm kind of also pretty charged up like the Energizer Bunny with my good old gamer subs. The flavor specifically would be Sweet Six Pack, which is cherry and pineapple. And well, with the 3 scoops that I have in here, that's about equivalent to a Monster, but it deprives the formula, the powder per se, the drink powder, of all like taurine and just all the really harmful ingredients. So now, like, not that I'm sponsored or anything, but I can always recommend Gamer Subs. It's cost efficient. 1 tub of 100 scoops lasts you about a month or 2, depending on whether or not you need 2 or 3 scoops every morning. But I am ready. I am geared up, and I am charged to talk all things Pray for Pain from the perspective of good old Kevin here, basis to basis as well. Gotta say too, real quick, that the heinous track, that bass intro though, that was delicious.
Thank you, mate.
Of course. So getting kickstarted off, of course, we have the podcast formula, and Kevin himself has even gone through the scripted questionnaire. That way, he could prepare his answers ahead of time, and hopefully, as time continues, and as this EP has more time to settle, we can also get the other members of Pray for Pain on the Anatomy podcast, tell their story, and if it comes down to it, we can compact it all into one session, but we'll see how that works, right? So we start with Kevin. We start with the main voice as far as the social media, the guy who responds most consistently on behalf of Pray for Pain. But most importantly, this is the first chunk of Pray for Pain, the first chunk of Pray for Pain lore that we get to kind of dive headfirst into. So I think one way that we can get this podcast kickstarted in the best ways possible is jumping right into question 1.
So okay. Basically, yeah. I think it's from what I how understood it. It's basically how I got into the whole thing. Like brutal death metal and what my background is. So I can also give you some insight on how the others, like what the other people's journeys was, because I know them for 10 years now. So I basically know almost everything about them.
Absolutely, by all means.
Yeah. Start with myself. I grew up in a small Austrian village. It's not in the mountains, but it was very rural. I think you say it was pretty much on the countryside. And I was we have 2 different types of high schools, you could say, in Austria, which is like Hauptschule and Gymnasium. And like Hauptschule is when you go more work oriented, and Gymnasium is more when you go to more academically targeted education. So at the end, because one is just like 4 or 5 years long, the other one is like 8 to 10 years long. And at the end of it, you're allowed to go to, like, it's basically like high school, but there's a thing, like in Austria, you have to have a degree from this gymnasium, and then you're allowed to study. So basically, a lot of nerds go there. A lot of, it's a bit mixed, but what I want to say is, like, I grew up with basically no one listening to metal around me. So I was a bit of a black sheep back then. Not like an edgy Columbine black sheep, but more like I don't know. I just listened to that stuff, and it was very outlandish to a lot of people. So I had some struggles when I was very young, but once I got to the older ages, from 15 to 18, it was fine. But it was very, very, very hard to find people to socialize with. I don't know, what did I start with? Like, but at 12 or 13, I went into like Slipknot and System of a Down. That normal stuff you get into with. And then I came to Cannibal Corpse, which were my like eye openers for me back then. Because like the Bleeding album is one of my favorite until this day. Because it's just so how do you say that? Like, it was ahead of its time to a degree. And then the next step was for me to getting into brutal death metal. And the very first record I got from there was Corpse Fucking Art, Scooby Doo. You know that?
No. Unfortunately not.
They're a brutal death metal band from Italy. They are still active. I think they started early 2000 and 90s or something. And they had like songs like Sacha Torture or Scooby Doo, Beverly Hills Corpse. And Beverly Hills Corpse just starts with the Beverly Hills Cop theme, but the singer is just grunting over it. And it's really fun. So that was my first thing, and it was very, very underground. And for some reason, I just got into it through a friend here from Vienna. And then I had a long journey into black metal. I played in a black metal band, and that was basically how I started playing bass, because some friends from me from Vienna, not from the rural side, they just were like, yeah, we're forming a black metal band. Here you got a bass. That's how I started learning bass, and that's I didn't even buy it. I just got handed and then I started. And then I did it for some years here in Vienna. I had another black metal band afterwards, and we just kind of fell apart, as it always does. And funny wise, the drummer from this black metal band introduced me to Mani, which is our guitarist in Pray for Pain. And since then, because he said like, yeah, there's a guy I know, he wants to do brutal death and grind. Do you want to talk to him? And then I just went there, and it just went fine, everything. And that's how I came to Pray for Pain. And back then it was called Sadistic Perversion.
Okay.
Completely different, and which is also a reason why we came up with a name change, because Sadistic Perversion just sounded like shit. And we were like, yeah, we need something more like, I don't know if Pray for Pain is catchy, but it rolls off the tongue more easy than Sadistic Perversion. It's way easier.
And not only that, but I would say that like the 2-word formula that like a lot of slam, brutal death metal, gore grind, slam, like whatever, there's a lot of bands that just have 2-word names, and it happens to be like some intermediate vocabulary. And there's no judgment on my end, but like when you see every single band doing that, it's kind of stupid. I mean, really the only exceptions that I would probably offer would be bands like Agiomatic Dematerialization, because that is a fucking mouthful. That is a slam band that we recently interviewed from Russia. So, and we have yet to do the second half of that podcast session. But like, I don't know, when you have like okay, here's a formula slam band name apparently. Trying to think of like 2 intermediate words.
Just put ectomy. Just put ectomy in that word.
That's true. The ectomy suffix, man. I got tired of that shit real fucking quick. There was the ectomy suffix. There was the X of X formula, and then there was the let's see. So, for example, distant, right? Distant from the Netherlands. Distant necropolis, or something like that. That actually doesn't sound bad now that I think about it. But those are both 2 separate bands. So maybe like necropolyptic
stuff like or axiomatic prolongation, something like that. It's just random words, just with
it's just so weird. It's so the funnier thing is, for example, the bands that we have hosted on this show, half of them who have those type of formula band names, they're like, well, we just thought it sounded cool. I'm like, bro, think of something better than please and thank you. Like Pray for Pain, that's a little bit more general. It's that type of shit. So if you can't even remember the name because you were like too drunk during the show, it's like, what was that one band? I was like, pray for like,
Pray for Pain. But no, it's also we could see that when we switched the name, and the thing is that even like older people, everybody, like the thing is in Austria, a lot of the older generation, and I'd say even 40 onwards, have not the best English skills, because it just almost never needed. Even though we're a very tourist friendly country, where you almost never need it. But even they understood it. So that was a bit for me a sign. Okay, I think that's an okay name because people will always be able to understand what you want to say with that.
Exactly. And that's always a good goal to
Yeah.
withhold from a marketing standpoint, right? If you, for example, my band's not exactly the best name, but I think it just rolls, right? Blind without our failures. But the thing is, you can kind of look at it as a full name, and if you want to, you can just call it Blind. Like, boom, aren't you from that band Blind without our failures? I'm like, yeah. But if you don't want to say the rest of the name, that's fine. Like Beowulf, BWOF, Beowulf. You know, that's a thing. And ironically, that's also unintentionally an acronym for my old gamer name, which is Beowulf. So it actually, it works pretty well. But nonetheless, from a marketing standpoint, I get why a lot of bands also do like one word names, but sometimes that's also really lame to me.
yeah. To be fair, like also good examples is like if you look into deathcore, for example, like Die Hard is Murder, everybody just says Die Hard. Fit for an Autopsy, everybody just says Fit. That's it, like just Fit, and it's like just everybody knows who you're talking to. And I think for Fit, it's actually pretty funny because if you think of it, it's like I don't know. Wait, I'm getting things up. Now wait, you have Fit for an Autopsy, but if you say Fit, everybody will know that you're talking about Fit for an Autopsy, but probably not about Fit for a King.
Yes.
So that's I don't know. It's just if you get to that level that you just say one word and everybody knows who you're talking about, I think then you're really, really successful.
Yes, exactly. Like once you build your personality, even if you have a 4-word band name and people just kind of acknowledge it by the first name, it's the same thing as acknowledging me as like Sean Cross. It's like, oh, you mean Sean? It's like, oh, cool. Like I'm that big that people know me by Sean. Like that's a big thing. Yeah. So kind of rewinding a little bit, right, upon your history, upon your legacy, I want to dig in as far as I can with those black metal projects that you did, being that you were in 2 before you were even in Pray for Pain, because ironically, we hosted a death metal band called Gluttony recently. They're from Sweden, really cool dudes, and their singer was like so far invested into the black metal community back in the 80s that like, well, because they are next door neighbors geographically with Norway, they were reading about the events of Mayhem and Burzum in the newspapers, right? So cool to think about. So I guess that's ironically a good way to continue that conversation is what ended up getting you into those bands other than just like, yeah, we need a bass player. You're going to be a bass guitarist now. It's like, how was your experience in those bands? And like, what did they kind of teach you about being in a band?
That's a good question, actually. It's like the first one definitely was just being, dude, we need someone to do that. And I always wanted to go into something with music. It's just always been like, I got a guitar when I was 6 years old, and I was horrible. The problem was that the problem just always was that I never got proper, lessons and education. And like my parents, they supported me in what I wanted to do, but they were not behind me really following that stuff. I mean, it's not their fault. Not like I'm blaming them. It's still up to me, But on the other hand, when you're 10 years old, when you're 14 years old, a lot of stuff changes. A lot of things in your mind just change, and you kind of lose track of stuff that you can do or that you want to do.
Yes. Not only that, but sometimes at the time you prefer that you're involved in something that your parents are like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't do that. You're like, I want to do
it. Exactly. Like when I joined the black metal band, they were cool. Thing is, my parents are very open, but they were not shocked, but also not very pleasantly amused by what I was doing. So like the first one was just with a childhood buddy who I knew since when I was 4 years old. And the other, so I was 16 back then, so we knew each other for 12 years already. So today we know each other 26 years. That's a long fucking time. And the other guy was a dude who was living around my corner. And I was 16, I think he was 22. So he was a bit older, which is in hindsight, it's a bit weird. Like when I was 22, I wouldn't have chilled with 16-year-olds probably, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, we got into that, and honestly, most of the time we just were drinking beer. It's just the early band. So what I learned first, to answer your question on that, was that I really, really liked the challenge of playing bass, because what I was so, and it sounds a bit stupid because everybody's thinking of bass mostly as a meme, but it's I started with Amon Amarth, playing Amon Amarth. That was fucking boring to me, and because like Pursuit of the Vikings, it's a cool riff. It's the first death metal riff that everybody plays on guitar, but on bass, it's just like E. That's the whole fucking song for you. So I started digging into what can I play, and then the next step for me was playing Red Hot Chili Peppers, because I really was into that slapping sound and all that. And then I rediscovered Cannibal Corpse for me, because getting into those Webster lines and getting into all this technical stuff was really cool. So what I learned from that was having fun in taking a challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the coolest thing for me. Or was the coolest thing today. I don't need that much of a challenge anymore because I'm very, very happy when I can just chill for some time. But yeah, it's still a driving factor, because playing new stuff always is a challenge, because you grow as a player.
Yes.
That's one of the most driving factors until today. And from the second band, what did I learn from the second band? I think mostly it was just for me like writing processes. I think that's one thing that I can really sign, is that I say that I learned a lot of writing, because I went for my first bass solo in that band, having the recording sessions for the first time, and it was the first band where I started doing normal musician stuff, you could say, like doing promo shoots and writing lyrics, giving feedback, writing stuff. That was actually the biggest things I learned. But to be fair, the band where I learned the most is, for me, is Pray for Pain, because we did the longest run so far with each other.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Wow, that was a very long answer.
No, you're good. You're good. Like, by all means, like, I want you to take your time and put as much detail into your story as possible, because basically one day I have a feeling that Pray for Pain will be known alongside other artists like fucking Waking the Cadaver and even Party Cannon, the boys in Party Cannon.
Yeah, the boys.
Until then, the boys.
The boys.
But basically, before you guys get too big to come onto the show, which is absolutely a joke, it's like before you guys get rich and famous off of Slam, it's like, I got to tell your story as intimately as possible. So take your time, by all means, with your answers. So we, going over those two black metal bands, after that, you ended up joining Pray for Pain. And I feel bad, because as much of a fan as I am, I completely missed the release date of your EP, Anatomy of Extinction, by 4 years. This motherfucker over here said 2014 is when you guys released that EP. Kevin's like, yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Did you say 2014? Like, I thought it was like 2020, but yeah, we didn't. I think it was 2018 or something, right?
2018, yeah. I went to Spotify to fact check myself. I'm like, oh my god, I really said 2014.
But if we're already on that, I just, because you said, I think Andy really developed, like as a singer, extremely. Yeah. But one thing, like on the End of Decency and on the Anatomy of Extinction, we still had an old singer back then.
Oh,
yeah, that was a completely different guy, and he was actually the guitarist of the other band that the guys of Pray for Pain had before me. They had a band called Morton, and but yeah, this honestly, that's he left at some point before we did the tour with Anal Lapsy Dysentery in 2019. He left.
Okay.
And yeah, so honestly, I was sad to lose a friend. But as a musician, I was very, very happy to welcome Andy into the band, because he's an amazing, like, if you ask me, from Austria, he's one of the top singers. we are a small country, and we have very, very amazing artists like Spire of Lazarus.
Yes,
I don't know
we've had them on the show.
Oh, did you really? You had them, really? Did
Yes.
you talk to Julius?
I think it was both their lead guitarist and their bassist.
So Thomas and Julius, yeah, that's funny because actually there's there was a different podcast here in Vienna which was called the Big Boys Podcast.
Oh.
And there's an episode with me and Thomas speaking bass and death metal. But it's like 1 hour of just me and him nerding off and just telling stories. Yeah. But it was in German.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes. No, we've had Spire on, and not only that, but at the time we hosted their US local vocalist John Nellis.
Yeah.
But I'm very, very eager to get them back on with. I think honestly, I love John and he's a great vocalist, but I do think that for like live performances and stuff, and for the continuity, the parallel between both live and in studio setting, I kind of do hope that they give their live vocalist a shot and kind of like prioritize and kind of center their efforts into Austria, because that other vocalist is really, really good too. And he's a beefy boy. He's a big boy.
He's a big chunky boy. Yeah. he's like one. He looks like a rugby player to me, like one of those huge guys, like completely defined body and all that. Yeah, he's a beast.
Seriously, no, he's a beast, and I'm definitely hoping to get him on the show as well sometime in the near future, as they like kind of descend into what could be their next album cycle, EP or album cycle. Maybe they do like an initiation EP, like Lorna Shore. Let's see, Lorna Shore. That's a good example. I kind of wish Mental Cruelty did the same thing with Lucas Nicolai. Just like, hey, okay, here's an EP. Do you like him? Cool. Let's make an album now. I like when bands do that.
Yeah, that's that's basically what we're trying to do right now.
Honestly, Species is a good initiation EP if that's the case. Like that's some solid shit. And I mean, your new vocalist, in that case, Andy, he is just as solid as the last one, if not better, you know? So fuck yeah. Let's see. So we touched upon those two black metal bands, and then we briefly talked about you getting into Pray for Pain. So what would you say, in as much detail as you can remember, like what was the process of getting Pray for Pain assembled? Like how did all that get started from your end?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we like the drummer of my old black metal band. He was friends with Mani already, because there is a place here in Vienna which unfortunately closed like 6 years ago, I think, which was called the Graffiti, which was a metal bar. And it was a very, very old bar, because I think it existed from mid-80s until like 2018, something like that. And everybody knew it. And so they met there from time to time, and concerts. And so I got into touch with Mani, and then we talked a bit, and then they already had everything assembled basically, like, because Mani and Alco, our drummer, they were in a band together, which was called Morton. Which played more. Yeah, I'd say let's just call it death metal. I'm very bad at putting bands into genres. And their guitarist was Stani, which then became our vocalist in Pray for Pain. And they ditched the old band because there was just no development.
Yes.
Even though they had a tour through Europe with Internal Bleeding and Disgorge, which was huge actually if you look at the lineup. Yeah. But yeah, there was just no development, so they said, okay, we want to focus on the new project, and I was just there. I was the bassist, and the funny thing was that I'm credited in the first album as recording the bass, but I did shit. I did absolutely fucking nothing. It's like always a thing for me. I'm always like, I like playing, I like having the challenge, but honestly, rehearsing and practicing the songs, I can always do it live. Like when it really matters, I can do it. It's fine. But brother, yeah, what's that? No, it's exactly that. So that's how we got assembled, and then as I said, we were called Sadistic Perversion before.
Yes.
I would say, nah, we don't want to do the grind stuff anymore. We had, I think, one EP with Sadistic Perversion. which was called The Beginning of Intemperance, which is completely based off the books of Marquis de Sade.
Okay.
And then, yeah, we just said, okay, it's an image change. We need to rename us. Sadistic Perversion sounds like shit. Let's go for Pray for Pain. And for us, yeah, that's basically our everything got sampled.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. So I guess we've more or less covered the question 2, which would be what got you into music. And, you know, if the credit belongs to anybody who did get you into music, when did they get you hooked? Are they still able to take the credit, or is they still around to take the credit? We more or less covered that. So,
I mean, to be fair, I would when I think what got me into that music is I also listen to a lot of other genres. Like when you, there's a pretty funny story. Like we have a photographer who comes from the UK. His name is Dave. So if you actually work with it, hi Dave. He's our little camera ginger. I call him my camera ginger. He's a lovely guy. I really love him, and he was on tour with us in 2019, and he said every time he talked to other people about what it's like being on tour, and he's like, yeah, you know, normally when I go on tour with other people, like from the UK or something, it's like playing the show, doing some metal, and then when you're back in the bus, you just go for, I don't know, some lo-fi hip-hop or some like actual hip-hop, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, no, these death metal guys, constantly death metal. Like you go to this, you unload, you drive to a gig, you unload, then you play the gig, you load in, then you drive to the accommodation, and then you drive to the next gig. And it was like he just put his earphone, like his in-ears in, and was like, he was just trying to escape from us. It's like, I personally, when I'm completely by myself, like driving the car, I really enjoy German hip hop and all that. But yeah, it's, for me, metal is something that I play, and something that I feel when being on a concert. I don't feel comfortable on other concerts. But constantly listening to it, I wouldn't be able to. And on that perspective, I think what got me to music was Cannibal Corpse, as I said. Like, I think they, even though they doing that shit for 30, almost 40 years now, they still deliver. And another band that I'm just very, 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 very happy to see thriving is Gojira, because Gojira was one of the most influential bands for me as a person. And seeing them getting that big and getting even better every year, it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, it's always great to see your favorite artists like starting to climb the ranks, and you're like, yeah, there's a reason I like these guys. It's because they're freaking good, and they're good enough that they're climbing the ladder. Like, I must have valid musical opinions or some shit.
Exactly, how you feel validated for your taste. I mean, if you want, I can also just give you a quick rundown on Alco and Mani and on how they got together, if you want.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
They were like, I think they, as I said, and like before we started recording, they are a bit older than me. They're like 10 years older. So they had a completely different approach to metal, because when they went into that, of course, they listened to Cannibal Corpse and all that. But one of their, like, for me, my entrance, or my mainstream entrance that all of us mostly have into metal was Slipknot and System of a Down. And for them, it was stuff like Pantera and Slayer. So that's a completely different approach to metal, in my opinion. And so and Alco was living in another city for some time. He lived a lot with some punks, and he's really into punk and hip hop. And Mani was always that guy who was into. He's really the driving force behind our songs, on how they sound, because he's the guy that always says it needs to be brutal. It needs to be punching in your face. It doesn't matter if it's done by extremely hard solos or if it's done by extremely groovy parts, but it's just, for him, it just needs to be a song that gives you no fucking rest. And so he loves Beneath the Massacre, and that's exactly what is, like, for me, Beneath the Massacre is the definition of restless. Like, you have no fucking break in their songs. It's just constant blast. And same like Origin, for example. And Andy was more of a hardcore kid. He also still has his hardcore band Throwback. They're also very, very, very good, and they're very successful in what they're doing right now. And yeah, he's more into that skater stuff and all that. So he comes more from that perspective. And so, yeah, you can see there's a lot of genres just getting mixed together.
Yes,
a lot of
and that's
approaches.
the best thing. It's the best thing ever for like heavy music, and when you're really trying to write and compose something that will distinguish itself from the rest without forcing itself to distinguish, like, yo, we have to be different than everybody else. It's like, dude, get over yourself. It's 2024. There are many bands who are trying to do the same thing as you. So person by person, which is like per the Anatomy podcast formula, really, and the reason why we host all these different artists from all over the world, is to kind of prove that statement that really what makes a band different from other bands is the people involved in the band and their favorite artists, their favorite albums, the people that got them into the music scene. Like, that shit's important, but it really just breaks down to those minute details that make Pray for Pain what it is, person by person. So love that shit. Love to hear that shit, and love to have, well, our 77th example, basically, of how, you know, these bands are different artist by artist. But I would definitely say that Pray for Pain is kind of like a very prolific band for Austria, if not bands like Spire of Lazarus, which of course we've also had on the podcast, and I'm very proud of that. I know Pray for Pain will be known as one of those prolific brutal death metal bands from Austria, and simply said, I'm here to enjoy the legacy as it kind of boils up over the pot.
Well, I hope so. Thank you for that positive mindset. You know, it's always it's cool to hear people enjoying that, because mostly when you go to the rehearsal room, you go to the recording and all that, and you just do that stuff.
Like, nobody cares, man. Why are we doing this?
Yeah, and you know, it's I love our shows. Like, I love our shows when we play in Vienna and we play other shows somewhere else in another country. Like, one of my favorite ones was at Defties a few years ago. But it's like, you just see that you're not up there, which is fine, because I'm not doing it for the money. You know, like, for all of us, it's just about, you know, we have our lives. We have that. We have our jobs. We know what we do. But it's just, sometimes it can be frustrating, and that was a crucial part also from writing Species. And that's what also was very, very critical sometimes in the writing process. Because holy shit, it took so long, because we rewrote that shit for like 5 times. That's like, when we started writing it, even the old singer was still in the band. You gotta imagine. So that's like 6 years ago.
That's crazy.
Dude, we if it was for us, we were like, we thought we were finished and ready to release in 2020.
Fair enough.
You gotta imagine, dude, the amount of frustration that we had sometimes was insane. Like, insane. It was so frustrating, because we felt like, okay, that's it now. And then we listened to it 1 month later, and we're like, nah, that's shit. That's absolute dog shit. And I gotta give Mani huge props, because he went completely rearranging his life to just, because he just found out a lot about himself and how he wants to live and how he does his livelihood and how he makes ends meet. And he somehow found a way to completely live for the band to a degree.
Yeah.
So, and by that I mean he really has the time to of 8 to 10 hours of just writing and recording and rearranging all that shit. Yeah. And that's when he actually stepped in and said, okay, guys, I'll take responsibility for everything. I'll write it. I'll do that. I'll send it over to you. And that basically was for us when we finally hit the direction that we wanted to go.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, like, tortured artist syndrome is just there. It's in the forefront for every single band and artist for all of time. Like, you get to a point, you get to the end of like maybe a standalone single, an EP, a full-length album, a double album, whatever the case may be. And you're also having to balance the creative opinions and the decisions between how many people are in the band. So I can imagine that it's just a mess for bands like Slipknot, who have 9 people and who are switching out people, welcoming brand new people in. And they're like, okay, we got to make this different. We got to make this feel different. We're all getting old as dust. We're about to like basically cough and just puff away and just turn to ash and float away off into the sunset. What do we want to do to make this better than what we've been doing since 1999? Bands like that, they have a history, they have a legacy to uphold. But then
they have expectations, they
have expectations, exactly. And I do believe that's one of the reasons that, on a different note, they decided to leave Roadrunner Records after all these years. One of the biggest record labels in metal, in rock, in new metal. And they're like, nah, we just want to go independent now. Like, it just feels right. But they also have the platform to sustain themselves without so many people being involved, right? So then you break down from the top of the tier, the top of the world, right? As far as some of the heaviest music that is marketable, that is radio friendly, you take it down to the bottom and you're like, okay, how do we take our next step? And how far do we want to reach out our legs as far as walking on that path? Walking on that journey, continuing that journey. Do we even want to continue that journey? Because it's a big financial investment. It's a big creative investment. All of us are full grown adults now. Why don't we have kids? Like, you ask yourself these kind of questions. And then at the end of it, even when everybody's in agreement, even when the band becomes a hive mind, I can only imagine, as per your example that you're providing, sometimes it takes way longer than most people might think to finally agree on something, be comfortable with something, put it out, and then move on. That's a whole process. And then there's marketing, there's social media, there's that hesitancy in, does anybody even care anymore? Because there are all these other bands all the time, all these new bands all the time with so much more energy. Maybe they have that ambition that we don't anymore. Should we even be doing this? You question yourself a lot. But most importantly, there's the tortured artist syndrome where you never want to settle. And you're like, well, I've already invested all the money that I have into this. Like, do I want to put it out? Do I want to, have that expectation of, I'm probably not going to get a cent from this? And you have to hone in on that, right? Because that's what art is. That's what creation is. Unfortunately, there's a whole bunch of stuff that plays into it.
It's also very funny. Like, it's a bit like when you're looking into the gaming industry and you have those whales, and you have those games where you just have this sunk cost fallacy. And you're just like, I put so much into that now, and even though that game is dead, I still need to keep playing because I put thousands of dollars into it. So it might be part of why you keep going, because I had it so often where I thought, like, okay, during that recording of the EP, I had so many moments where I was like, oh, do I really want to do this? Because we just redid it again, and it's just costing me money and time and energy. And then you just think about, no, that's just what I want to do. And also that's I put so much effort into it already. Why would I quit now?
It's funny then too, because like the same statements that have you hesitant are the same reasons that you should keep going,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Exactly.
It's so strange how music works.
I also talked to Lucas from Stillbirth about it, and Stillbirth are here for such a long time now. Like, they started end of 1999, and they just had their 25 years anniversary, and I think people in the Central European area already knew Stillbirth for years now, but I think what really got them blowing up was when they had their first tour with Vulvodynia back then, and then they had the Zaflik tour, like the European Smokeout tour, and now they got bigger and bigger every year. And but looking at how long they're active for, this is just the last third of their history where they actually got that successful. And I from the bottom of my heart, I really enjoy seeing them being that successful, because I know the people behind it, and I know how much fucking work they put into it this for every year. And even Lucas told me, like, the problem is that you have to keep paying, you have to keep investing, because otherwise you don't stand a fucking chance. Because how the fuck do you think you get promoted to a level, or how do you get a chance to reach that level where somebody acknowledges you?
Yeah, exactly. You kind of, and in that way, as opposed to, quote, selling your soul back in the 80s or 90s to any rock or metal band where, you signed to Columbia Records or maybe even Sony Records back in the day, because those were the big dogs. Like, if it wasn't Sony or Columbia, nobody fucking cared. But That's besides the point. You sold your soul back then to them by like kind of selling your personality. You gave them full jurisdiction over your entire life. And well, back then, because the internet wasn't a thing and we all weren't able to interconnect and understand each other, have empathy and sympathy towards each other, then you had paparazzi. It's like, well, you wanted this kid, so fucking deal with it. Now, selling your soul is more or less just financial investment and understanding that because of the history, because of all the years that this has been going on for so many different subgenres, then you have to find your niche. But most importantly, when it comes to selling your soul these days, it's more or less just your time. It's your time, your resources. It's making these bigger decisions. So in an essence, like for some people, it might be a little bit more difficult than just selling your soul and dealing with paparazzi, possibly even getting stalked. Over in Japan, you take it to another level with idol culture, right? Like if you, you know, it's kind of goofy example, but it still stands really well, I think. There's this new show, this new anime that came out called Oshi no Ko, or My Star. And it's really, really dark, but it gives you the idea that it's colorful. It's all bright and positive on the surface. But you actually watch the show and you kind of get a glimpse of what it's like being an idol. And it goes as far as like idols getting murdered by obsessive fans. Like that shit happens over there. It's crazy. So then you think, okay, well, at least I'm not an idol to where if I do anything wrong and if I lose a single pound of weight, there's possibly going to be a fan that hunts me down, happens to already be located in Austria, or flies over, which is already a massive investment. And then they start hunting me and my family down. Like, holy shit, I feel bad for Japan. Like that's kind of what happened for me after watching the show. I'm like, holy shit, we think it's bad with Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Drake, all these other fuckers. Like, of course, they make billions and they're causing pollution and they're leaving a carbon footprint on the planet. Most likely their fans are borderline cults and stuff. They're really twisted shit. But then you think of Japan and it's even worse. Like, what the fuck?
No, it's a cultural thing. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then, you kind of break it down to the level of Austria being a smaller European country, still being known and still being in like the German region. So like we were discussing before session, there's like a drastic difference between politics and how we see politics versus how Austria sees politics. But at the end of the day, then bring all that down, bring all of that full circle, kind of like vacuum it back into just the rehearsal room. And you're like, you know what? At least I'm not a Japanese idol, dude. Like where I have fans stalking me.
It's a new point of view for me, for sure. Never compared to me. I never compared myself to a Japanese idol, though. But yeah, I think it's. I mean, we do have, I think, a kind of idolization. If we think about it, we also kind of tend to have an idolization like that. Here in the let's say Western like metal community.
Yes.
Because if you think of it like good example for me, Ginger is a good example because it's honestly from not a big fan of them. Like it's for me, it's just not my cup of tea. I can understand why people like it, but it's just not my type. But that's not even what I want. That's not even my point I want to make. The point is that the amount of fucking fan pages I find on Instagram and not even like you would assume that the internet being that predatory place that it is, that it mostly just focus on their front woman. But it's like of everyone, like it's there is a whole fan page just for the bassist, for example. And every member of that band gets so idolized. And it's look like I know you have a lot of Lorna Shore stuff on your channel. And looking at the idolization and cult around Will Ramos now is huge, dude. That guy could just, I mean, it's probably also because he had a YouTube channel before and he already made a brand of himself. Like not in a judging way, just like he already was a brand.
You're good.
But I think that's also some type of cult to a degree. And I think he's a great vocalist, but it's for me, it's I just don't have the tendency to form a cult around a person.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
Yeah, exactly. You don't exactly see yourself having like a cult following more or less pray for pain, because most of the time, immediately, right off the bat, like you were mentioning, without mentioning it, frontman syndrome is such a thing. It is such a clusterfuck of an ideology. And it's the reason that there's also the reason I do this. It's like, yo, it's not just the singer who fucking matters. Like,
but it's the guy who interacts the most with the audience. So they have
exactly.
they just have a parasocial connection to him.
Right.
It's like when I talked to Joe from Fit for an Autopsy one time, and he also does Twitch streams. And I mean, it's just the thing is that Joe is a great singer, and he's doing a lot of doing a huge part to the success of Fit for an Autopsy, in my opinion, because he also he's a barber. Yeah, he went. I think he did that during COVID. He opened that barber shop, if I'm not mistaken.
It's actually here in Arizona.
Oh, really? Yeah. Have you been there?
I haven't gotten there to book an appointment, but it's funny because his barbershop, Continental Barbershop, is actually right outside the Nile Theater, which is one of Arizona's most popular metal band venues. So I'm like, cool. Good marketing, good thinking. I've seen him a couple times in there. And Matt Honeycutt from Kublai Khan, he used to work at the same one. So he would bounce. Yeah, he would cycle in through there quite a few times as well. But you were saying.
And Joe is a absolutely lovely person, and like I really like everyone from Fit for an Autopsy, especially Blue, who's also playing in Dysentery. Is it Dysentery? I think it's pronounced. And they're all lovely guys, but it's still the thing is that everybody will associate Fit or interact in their minds with Joe because he also does the Twitch stream, so he's the face of the band on that regard. Even though there is and looking at it, thinking about it, while Will Putney is doing the whole studio stuff for them, and Will is one to get like together with Pat. Those two are just this massive engine behind it.
Yep.
And that's so crazy to think about that Joe is such an influential figure on that, rightfully so, because he's a lovely person. But thinking of how much work other people also do and what parts they do that don't get initially connected with in that. Yeah. So that's crazy to me to a degree.
And honestly, it's one of the many goals I hope to conquer, and one of the many mechanics that I hope to disassemble with my own project, because very similar to Sheffield metalcore band While She Sleeps, where every member of the band is singing, or they have the Sleep Society Patreon where Sean Long, the lead guitarist, also talks about anxiety. Matt, the rhythm guitarist and other vocalist, right? He does marketing. They all do these different things on the Sleep Society, and it naturally pulls in more people. I'm wanting to do that same thing because I have no intention, absolutely no intention of my own project being one of those bands to where like I'm the only person known in the band. And the funny thing is, I'm not even going to be the front man. I have someone else in mind. I'm already talking with them. We're going to be getting a whole bunch of stuff figured out, but I try not to talk about my own project too much because we have one fucking song out.
It's all fine.
So, I don't like frontman syndrome. I think that's the stupidest shit ever. And on top of that, when like, for example, Shrine, we were talking about that earlier, way earlier. Basically, the reason the whole band collapsed is because the singer had issues. It's like, dude, come on. Like, really? the other musicians involved, like, there was nothing dirty on them. But at the same time, they were like, yeah, we don't plan to get another singer anytime soon. So we're just going to go quiet for now because everybody's still fucking angry and cancer culture friendly. So it's like, okay, let's go ahead and take a break, go underground.
Yeah.
The James Joker Williams, their main manager, as he manages other projects as well. He participates in other projects as well. And he's also just, kind of an LA friendly, like baseball / weed friendly personality. He's like, we'll just go silent gangster, right? There's nothing for us to talk about. There's nothing for us to stumble over ourselves and defend. So we'll just go underground. We'll go quiet for a little bit. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
To be fair, that whole going quiet strategy, if you want to call it like that, makes sense. because like I can mostly talk about German YouTube shitstorms when there is a huge shitstorm. Dude, and there's like so much tea to this bill. But the thing is that that's just going quiet for some time, and then just there's always the saying, the internet never forgets, which is true. Internet doesn't forget, but there will be new people coming to your stuff, and there's on the other hand one thing that I just want to point out, like this thing with cancel culture. I can mostly talk about it in the European area. Is that I think cancel culture isn't really a thing. And I can explain what I mean by that. Explain what I mean by that. It's like cancel culture is so the way a lot of people on the internet view cancel culture is like this angry mob of telling, yeah, we're gonna destroy that person because they did something that we don't like, or blah, 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 blah. And it almost never works. Like if you go through a lot of influencers that were affected by cancel culture, so to say.
Yeah.
Looking at the German area, most of them had a real shitstorm. Everybody was like, I don't know, in Germany would be cancel Annie the Duck. She's a cosplayer girl, Twitch streamer, huge following, even does synchro voice dub for the new Garfield movie in the German-speaking area, so she's huge. And she's an absolute psychopath. That just came out. She really drove a lot of people into therapy. Yeah, it's huge. Really, Germany is a shit show. And so the thing is that before her, I don't really think that there were a lot of people that had a shitstorm and cancel culture hitting them, who then lost their livelihood because they just kept going, because they just went quiet, and afterwards everybody was like, next shit show. You just have to wait for the next shit show. So I think that because people they don't forget, but they just don't care anymore after some time.
Yeah, and that kind of that mindset right there, that response, just like, I mean, shit happened, but what are you gonna do? For me, that kind of goes into the separate the art from the artist thing, and I'm like, hell no. For me, it's like if the person's actually shit, don't give them a platform, because biggest example over here in the States would be Mr. good old Ronnie Radke from Falling in Reverse. Despise that motherfucker.
He did one good thing, which was giving Sangui Stugabock a huge social media boost when he started beef with them. That was the best thing he's done in decades. So I love him for that.
Dude, like, other than that, though, it's like, Jesus Christ, this dude has been like banned off of multiple social media platforms for obvious reasons, and they still give him a platform. It's like, it's almost cringy, but it's like not. When you're not really involved on that tier of counterculture music, like, what are you going to do? Just keep ranting and raving about it? No, you just do your own thing. And if you ever end up being in his direct line of fire on social media or as far as critique, whatever, and he's like, yo, fuck this band. It's like, okay, back off, because we don't know you. And that's it. Boom, bada bang.
Yeah. I get that. No, but I can give you one example of a German YouTuber who actually got canceled, which was during COVID, and he started selling, what's it called? He started basically like organic face masks and all that, because he was always an impact YouTuber with good change in the world, and he was a nice guy. And the only reason, so what came out was that apparently he didn't produce the masks as ethically as it was claimed, and he was a bit like, it came out that he was a bit more into the money than he actually proclaimed. So there was a huge shit show, and that whole thing got uncovered by a huge German television show, which is also kind of weird that it wasn't television, and all the old people like, who the fuck is that guy we're talking about? And the only reason why he actually got canceled was because he cared. Because he said, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do better. And that's true. Sorry. And I'll try to improve myself. And the problem is, for me, personally, as a human being, that's a good move to do.
Yes.
Like looking at looking at your mistakes and just owning them. But afterwards, the internet just was like, oh yeah, he's guilty. And the thing is, if you don't care about it, and if you just stay fucking silent about it, eventually you will forget. And the only people that actually got canceled by cancel culture, in my opinion, were those people that you actually don't want to get canceled, because in their core, because in this court, this guy also was a good person, because otherwise he would have never owned up to his mistakes.
Yes.
That's the only people that actually got really hit by that. And those ones that you criticize for being assholes and for being bad people, then since they're bad people, they just stop caring, and then the internet doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, it's so in that matter, that's like speaking for Germany and like European cancel culture. How it works.
It's just from my point of view.
Yeah, you're good. So like then over here, oh yeah, that's it. It is savage over here. It is very, very uneasy being like anybody with a decent platform. And I mean, I'm basically right, like speaking for YouTube, right on the cusp of starting to become something, which is very strange to think about. It's taken me 3 years. I mean, cool. It's taken me a long time to get to the point after being so late in the race of reactive content creation and shit, because it's very clickbait. It's very brain dead content. I'm not going to pretend it's not. It's basically you just go like making all the emotions, and it's stupid, but also it's press. And when you're authentically involved in those communities, and you're wanting to be, when you do the homework, and when you have a this is just going to be a meme with Sean Cross most likely, when you have an almost equal ratio between the amount of subscribers you have and the amount of videos you have. For perspective, so I currently have 943, cleared out some videos. I'm still at 937 videos. That's homework right there. That's time that you put in. But big but. Cannot lie. You other bucks. It's right on the cusp of being canceled at any moment. And I mean, the conversations I've had with the boys in Shrine, I'm like, man, I really hope that people don't cancel me after I do the Shrine interview. And they're like, man, fuck them. Like, don't get canceled, bro. Just stand your ground. And in this situation, just like we did, if people have these certain allegations, these assumptions, and they're trying to spread misinformation, don't acknowledge it. Ignore it. Ignore it like the mosquitoes and the flies that it is. But the moment that it is true, and you need to own up for your shit, and you have the capability to do that on your own, atone, just like you guys do over in Europe, with just like content creators do over there, because the internet is not judge and jury. A court is. But the thing is, if you're in that situation and you're going to court for something, of course, for the most part, if you don't feel it's necessary to summon the information of being in court for something, and just that word alone, it's like, why are you in court? You're a YouTuber. It's like, some information doesn't need to be on public domain, right? Because once it's there, it doesn't leave. But if you have something to atone for, if you have something to repent for, if you did some stupid shit in the past that was relatively harmless and people ask about it, don't fucking ignore them. Acknowledge that shit.
Look at mental cruelty. They had the same shit happening to them. Like I think there was this the singer who was molested, abusing a woman or something, or I don't know. Like, just from what I remember.
Luca, creepy boy.
I think there was something, I can't really remember. Like, if anybody holds me accountable for that, I'm definitely not gonna one up for it. But it's I think there was something in that direction. But I can remember that they, like, one day after everything emerged, 1 or 2 days after, they said, okay, we cut ties with him, because we know of these allegations, we don't want to support them. And same with Shore. Like, what was the whole shit with CJ? And all the cringe videos coming afterwards for me, like it was so fucking cringe, these apology videos. Holy shit. And it was so brain dead. Anyway, like, but if you actually say, hey, we heard that, we see the victims, we acknowledge the victims, and we believe them, and we don't say, yeah, you're just a fucking psychopath trying to ruin us and all that. And then you actually that's the important thing, take a consequence out of that.
Yes.
And if you do that, then everybody will be fine with you. You just need to redeem yourself to a degree.
Yes.
But it will be fine, because you should not get punished for stuff that other people did. And that's exactly where I'd also say, don't, as you said, like, I also don't distinguish art from the artist, or you know, it's the same thing. If I give an asshole a platform, I'm doing that.
Seriously.
So yeah. So if you have an asshole in your band, kick them out and just see the consequences and keep on going with your stuff as long as you're not the asshole. Yeah. Wait, I can hear you right now. No, you're gone. My boy. Okay. It's okay. I'm doing the podcast now. Still can't hear you.
No, you're good. You're good. Hold on.
Oh, no, there
let's see. I have to. It's a whole process. I don't know what it is. This is an industry standard, Mike. It's the meme of the anatomy podcast, one of many. But I mean, honestly, that it's very, very difficult and sad for me to see how many people don't separate the art from the artist these days. And of course, you're not obligated to, like,
you mean who like how many people separate the art from the artist, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I'm just not a fan of that shit, because the thing is, when you're actually supporting bad people, it's almost like enabling bad behavior, right?
Yeah.
Like you're still making money off of the merch, even though, I don't know, they're a felon behind the scenes, or they might be a pedophile, which is a pretty bold word to use. But that shit happens. It does.
Yeah.
It's the same way that I think Hollywood over here in the US needs a massive reset, because there are way too many actors who are involved in very, very dark stuff. And there's a
lot of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
And I have a theory about that, why it's I'm gonna sound like a tinfoil head, but it's like
by all means.
Not I don't want to like I'm not believing in it to, conspiracy theories were way funnier 20 years ago, because back then it was okay, it was goofy. Like, I don't know, it was goofy, and you were like, oh yeah, okay, that's fine. Okay, some of the shit I could believe, but all these reptiloids and flat earthers and all that, it's a bit so, but I think that you have this accumulation of people that are in this industry and have very, very bad behaviors, or very predatory behaviors, is because you only get into those positions if you already have a certain drive in you, a certain urgency to be important, and that you want to be someone who has power. And you have that hunger for power. Obviously, you kind of have a liking into using that power, and that can tend to people abusing that power.
Yeah,
and I think that's so that's basically in every fucking industry, looking at, like, it's in the politics, it's in the show business, it's looking at big corporations. Obviously, if you're a fucking CEO, you have power, and obviously you have the power to abuse that power. So
it's a question of whether or not you have or not. And then,
it's a question of, do I want to be the asshole? Do I have a liking in abusing other people and just abusing that power? Because it's not really same, because it's a pedophiles. Often it's not about doing stuff to an underage person, but just having the power to do that. It's often pleasure and power that people have.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, with that note, and to kind of conclude that tangent without spending an hour on it, because I could spend like 3 to 5 hours talking about that shit, but we don't have the time to do that.
Yeah,
it's getting later over there for you. Needless to say, separate the art from the artist is one of the most toxic statements, because it climbs the ladder all the way up into politics and Hollywood. And I think it just enables bad behavior, and on a predatory sense with children. Like, dude, no, I'm good. But good thing I'm not trying to get into Hollywood anytime soon, because most of the people, period, in that industry are just involved in that shit. It's so gross. But so we talked about the scene. I do believe, like, we gave a brief synopsis of, like, your involvement in the scene. Is there any other commentary you would want to, like, conjure regarding the Austrian local scene? Maybe some local heroes that you grew up with that are climbing the ranks now?
Climbing the ranks is a bit like we have what we grew up with was something like Punch and Stench, who have just this big legacy. Other musicians that are really good for me, well, like the guys we're playing a show tomorrow with, is a Parental Advisory. They're doing this forever. They also had some US gigs already a few years ago, but they are not on the they're kind of underrated in my opinion. And other stuff like Distorted Impalement, They were also from Austria. So we have a lot of them, but we have a lot of good bands. But the problem is that we have a very small scene here in Vienna. So we have those people, we have that iron core, you could say, that always comes to shows. But if I'm a show promoter myself, and I do quite a few shows. But if I get 100 people, I'm already like completely out of my mind, because it's like that's having 100 people attending your show is huge. It's really huge. So that's we're pretty small here in Austria, but it's fine. Any
Keep it
other
humble.
one? Yeah, no, it's fine. I wanna make it grow, actually, because like I just see the potential. I know that there's a lot of young people, and that's another thing in our scene. It just grows older and older. And I think with the whole deathcore thing, we can get a lot of young people, but deathcore people often don't want to go to brutal death metal shows, or they just don't have that. What they lack is someone that kind of takes them by their hand and says, "Hey, go to that show."
Right.
And that's what I want to kind of what I try to do. But
did you say Stillbirth is also from Austria?
No, they're from Germany. They're from somewhere around Cologne.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So we have, if anything, too, by all means, please send me all the names for these bands post session. That way I can start listening to them and possibly get them on the show as well, and be like, "Hey, Kevin from Pray for Pain recommended you, so get on my show."
Distorted and Impalement, unfortunately, already split up years ago. They're not active anymore, but Parental Advisory is still there.
Yes, they just actually released an album, it seems.
Did they?
Yes.
I don't know. It's always like I'm very, very, very fucking bad on releases.
So I correct myself, because I missed it by at least 6 months, right? With us, no, 5 months. So they released an album December 13th of 2023 called Soundtrack of an Oncoming Apocalypse. So
Parental Advisory.
Yes.
Let me just okay. I wasn't worried that. As I said, I'm very, very fucking bad.
Well, I mean, as long as you remember the name, right? Like, that means we can take the time on the show to recommend them, and also just kind of look into it real quick.
But I just Googled it, like on the Metal Archives. I just looked it up because Darren said like the last one is Parasite, which was 2021. I can remember that.
That was a single.
Oh no, it was a single. It's an EP. Fuck that. I don't know. I'm just gonna ask him tomorrow. Just fuck that.
You're like, hey, I forgot you guys were a thing. What's up?
honestly, if they're watching the episode now, I'm really have to apologize. I'm sorry. Honestly, if I wasn't in the band, I wouldn't even fucking know that we released something. So
fair enough.
It's fine.
I mean, honestly, that's just the burden of trying to network as much as people like you and me do. Like, we happen to not miss a couple bands. That's part of the process. We can't keep up with all the millions of bands across the world. I mean, dude, the Anatomy podcast is me basically trying to keep up with hundreds of bands around the world. That's not going to last for long.
Exactly. No, I get that. No, it's exactly like that. It's just also the thing is, I talk to a lot of people that like doing music, and everybody, like, I know that most of the people don't immediately listen to releases. Like we all just go for it like
it's like, oh yeah, cool. I'll check it out sometime.
I'll check. Mostly, I check it like 6 months later, and I'm like, oh hi guys, did you hear about that record? And it was like, dude, that's so old by now.
Like, dude, we're already halfway through a new album.
Yeah, dude, I'm really late to most parties, so yeah.
I mean, we got Parental Advisory. That's one for sure. You mentioned a band that's no longer
Distorted Impalement. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and what you also could check is Left to Drown. They were also pretty good on doing pretty good on Schlangwald Wide.
Left to Drown.
Left to Drown.
Left to Drown. Okay.
Yeah. And the singer of the singer of that band is Nico, and he is also the guy behind a project called Until We Die.
Yes, Until We Die. Yes.
Yeah.
I like that band.
Sick. Yeah, and he's the guy behind Left to Drown as well. So
cool. Until We Die,
definitely have to check those guys out. Yeah,
absolutely. That was definitely one of those bands I found. Let's see, I would say back in at least 2019 or 20, when I was still like searching out for like Blackened deathcore
Yeah.
bands and shit. Like that was definitely one of the recommendations. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Okay, 2016. That makes more sense. So I found them back when they first released before the decay of time. I'm like, man, one day, what if I became a YouTuber and started listening to bands? It's like, yeah, here we are, bud. You took way too fucking long. So there's Until We Die. Well, not Until We Die. Left to Drown. So there's Left to Drown. There's Parental Advisory. There's obviously Spire of Lazarus. Love you, boys. And then we have Pray for Pain now on the lineup. So yeah, by all means, to the members of Left to Drown, Parental Advisory, or literally any other Austria local acts, if you happen to be listening to this podcast as we continue accumulating and developing audience in those respective countries, it's like, hey, we finally have an Austrian band. It's like, oh, which Austrian band is it? And they finally check out the episode. It's like, if you want to add yourself to the lineup, by all means, reach out. Sean Cross 84462 at gmail.com. Let's get something set up. But look at me promoting and giving out my email. Not even like halfway through the session. Jesus.
We're already talking for like 2.5 hours now.
Seriously, dude. It's crazy.
It's
crazy, what is it, like 11, almost 11:30 for you now?
Yes. But it's fine. 2 hours. I just checked my phone when I texted my girlfriend that I'm on the call. 15, 16. Yeah, I don't fuck that. Yeah, it's above 2 hours. Yeah.
Right. There we go. And I mean, 2 hours for the first part of, was it like 4 or 5 people that you guys have?
Yeah. But to be fair, the others are not that talkative as me.
That's fair. That's
fair.
So
it's like yeah.
We'll get you someday, boys. I swear to God, we'll get you someday. Question 4, because this is a newer one. This is the newer one I've introduced to Formula. I'm not even sure if it made it to the email for you guys. Location.
If I'm location.
Yes.
Because question 4 is for me. What are you a gearhead?
Okay, right. So I definitely updated it. Probably updated it right after I sent the questionnaire over. Go figure.
All fine.
So question 4 would be location, and this is just in regards to Austria, right? We want to get your perspective. I want to get your perspective on Austria. Question 4, part A, would be, what is something that you can tell us about where you're from geographically speaking? Like, what's something you think that most Americans or maybe most Indonesians probably assume about Austria, and you're like, no, fuck that. We're about to correct that, but in a good way.
It's actually funny because there's one big example that everybody associates with Austrian men, like 2 actually, but one is actually right, because the one that is right is that or Arnold Schwarzenegger comes from here. So he's like, and the way he talks, most of, if you would speak English to any Austrian person on the street, most of them would talk like him. We are just very bad at foreign languages. But the other thing that is also very huge is, do you happen to know the movie The Sound of Music?
Yes.
That's filmed in Austria, and it's about an Austrian family, and everybody just thinks we love that movie because everybody, or a lot of people in the US, know that movie. And here in Austria, a lot of people don't even fucking know that movie. Nobody gives a shit about it. Like, it's not even. It's like there is, when around Christmas, when you have, public television, and they just start playing the old classics, like, I don't know, Home Alone and all that. Or in my example, I always watch Rambo with my uncle on Christmas. I don't know, it's just a tradition by now.
Yes.
But Sound of Music isn't even getting broadcasted at that time, because nobody gives a shit about it, and it's pretty funny. And we also we have a lot of mountains and a lot of green, what is it called, willows, I think. No, not willows. Plains, green plains on where the cows grass and all that.
That sounds
we have
so
a lot
nice.
of that. Yeah, like Propane, the hardcore band. They when the last time they did a tour in Europe, they're from the US, and they just took a moment during the songs in their set. They just said, like, guys, we were driving through Austria the whole day, and you have no fucking clue how beautiful it is here, because you're all used to it. And every time I have friends coming over, they always feel like it's from a Disney movie, because it's just like, Vienna is beautiful. It's because it's a socialist city, and we take care of things. And it's beautiful. We have amazing historical old buildings, and everything is,
That sounds really nice.
It is nice. it's lovely, and we as a country have grown so big because we care for people. We don't we are so far away from that Darwinistic capitalist idea of you have to work for everything, you have to work to grow, and if you don't work, you're worth nothing. That's not how we live, and that's why we became so prospering.
Take notes, Biden.
Exactly. Honestly, like as we spoke about, and how different politics in Europe and in US is.
Yes. Let's segue into that, bro.
I don't want to get too deep into that, but seeing how people view Bernie Sanders as the most communist motherfucker on the ballot, he would be pretty centered left in Europe, because his demands are not that big here. But as I said, like there's a lot of history with red fear and all that, so I understand where this idea comes from. But yeah, that's in Austria has been a socialist country for a long time. Vienna is a socialist city for decades, and we have been voted most livable city in the world repeatedly. So because we care for people, and that's on. Speaking of species, getting back to that stuff, this is also something that, because you didn't have the lyrics so far, but a lot of the lyrics are kind of from a view like that, because what is it, Cadaver, for example, is mostly about, like, I'm a vegan 4 or 5 years now, and I just want to, I'm really into animal rights and all that, and I also do charity shows here in Vienna, and we, it's the whole lyrics is just about how this unhinged consumption, and how we are taught to do so, and how we are taught that striving or aiming for endless consumption and economic power is just pressed into us. We'll just kind of, on one part, you will just kind of thrive on the suffering of weaker, maybe people who are wage slaves, as you say, as people call it, or whether you are an animal that just gets abused for being a commodity, or who gets treated as a commodity. And you can only thrive on their suffering, and at some point there is nothing left to exploit. And basically that's what the whole song is about. And I don't know if you watched the video where we all start throwing up and we vomit onto the table and all that. It's basically, on one hand, we just wanted to make a funny video. It was just about shits and giggles. It's just very trashy. It's me actually throwing up. Like, if you see that, that's actually from the bottom of my heart. But it's also like, if you look at some things in the video and you look at it in a more serious way, and you can see that there is a lot of criticizing on that, and that mirrors the lyrics that we wrote for it. Cool. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff like that on Species, even though it's just 4 songs.
Yeah, it's a great way to kind of get back on the grind. And I mean, I can definitely say, because this podcast, I definitely want to make sure everybody understands that this podcast is also to absorb and acknowledge different perspectives other than that of me and my co-host now. I could not be vegan, right? But I understand the reason behind it. For me, it's kind of like everything on the planet has its purpose. And if it was up to me, I would only eat the animals that I slaughter myself, because, well, in that situation, absolutely overconsumption, right? Gluttony is a sin that's basically most of the agricultural industry.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, it ends up being more impactful, and you understand the consequence behind it. When you have your own farm, you're raising up your own animals, and you're having to kill your own animals. Well, a lot of people don't want to go through that process. They want to pluck that misery away. And therefore, well, we had the farming industry, we had the slaughterhouse industry. Fuck slaughterhouses. If it was up to me, they wouldn't all be blown up per se, as they're already getting blown up over here in the US. And I think that's also that's a whole different conspiracy theory based conversation. But needless to say, I definitely love meat. definitely a carnivore, but I understand where people come from that don't want to endorse that lifestyle anymore, because it's very tragic, it's very sad, and there is a lot of abuse that occurs that basically plucks all emotional ties away. And as far as I'm concerned, most of the people who are hired to slaughter in slaughterhouses are most likely psychopaths that are fresh out of prison.
I can actually give you a good documentary on that, which was done in it's not something like Dominion or something, but there was a French documentary on where they interviewed slaughterhouse workers, and every one of them was suffering immensely. And they all said if they weren't in that precarious situation, in a precarious economic situation that they have to do the job to survive, they would never in their whole life they would do that again or recommend it to anyone else. Yeah. Is it either the psychological damage, because a lot of them say they wake up crying at night, or is it the physical toll it takes on you, because a lot of them have like chronic illnesses in their hands and arms because you're just a factory worker at that point. So that's an industry that exploits a lot of existences on so many levels. And since I just wanted to one point that you said is like you would do it if you had to do it yourself, and that's a conversation I would have at another point, but that's not the thing. But the problem is, or the thing is that a lot of people don't really understand with veganism is that the vegan society, when they defined the rules, one of the rules are basically to avoid any animal suffering causing products or using any animals in the process, as long as it's doable. Because like when you're on a fucking island where you have nothing to eat, then obviously I'm gonna go for a fish, maybe. I have to survive. And that's one thing that maybe I just want to kind of clear up to some degree. Because a lot of people just think vegans are the guys that are, you're not allowed to do anything. Yeah, in our society, there's no fucking need for anyone to eat meat, in my opinion, or any animal product. But if you are on that island, even vegans are allowed to eat meat, because if you have to do it to survive, nobody is deluded enough to think that then you would rather have to die. And that's
for those who are, that's a different conversation.
Then they're very free to die. If they just want to starve, then it's their fucking opinion. But if I don't know, if I pull a Tom Hanks and get cozy with a fucking volleyball, then I'm very, very likely gonna eat a fish or something from time to time because I want to survive.
So I wanted to full circle a little bit to 4A, because we were mentioning you had at least 3 bulletins regarding like stereotypes that people regard people, things that people associate with Austria. Did I completely miss the actor reference to the guy who was from Inglourious Bastards?
Christopher Waltz. Yeah, he's from Vienna actually.
Yes, I love that
Vienna.
guy.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy, and the reason he fucked off from Austria was because Austria, even though we are very, very supportive of people living, or we used to, now like a lot of right-wing shit is happening, but not so cool here. But the problem is with the cultural industry to a degree, because what we have is that some people are in important positions that decide where the money is going to.
Yes.
And Christopher Waltz said that he had no chance in growing or blowing up the way he did if he would have stayed in Austria or Germany.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's just making a decision for yourself that like brings prosperity later on, but it's not incredibly it's not evil by any means. It's just you're doing what you think is right for yourself. Yeah. So that's important.
Same shit with Belfagor, by the way. I don't know. You Belfagor, the black metal band? Yeah. They moved to Netherlands.
Okay.
Yeah, like
but they're originally from Austria.
They are from Austria. Like they Helmut, he's the guy behind Belfagor. Decades ago, he just said fuck Austrian scene. He just moved to Netherlands and started recording his shit there because there was a proper scene behind it and he could do this stuff. And most of the musicians, if you ask them when they are from Austria, if you ask them, most of them just say fuck Austria, because culturally we are very, very mainstreamy. We are very, very good consumers.
Yeah, exactly. But there's nothing wrong with that. So
Yeah.
question 4, B, I guess, because we have 3 questions in here, but I'll try to get through them as quickly as possible. Would you
Yeah.
say your history in the place you grew up and where you were born in affected the way that you would eventually write music?
I mean, I come from a place where the Nazis reigned. So to a degree, yes, because I'm really, as I said before the podcast, I'm very anti-fascist.
Yes.
And I think every decent human being should be anti-fascist.
No Nazi listeners, please and thank you.
Yeah, fuck off. As Napalm Death said, Nazi punks, fuck off. There is so yeah. I think yeah, because this whole socialist thing kind of and my grandfather was a big party member. I'm not big in sense of importance, but like from his beliefs and his how convinced he was of the socialist idea. I just grew up with this whole thing of everybody should be equal and treated equally and have the same chances, and think about how we as a group write lyrics that has a big influence on us.
Oh yeah. 4C, oops, there goes my mod. 4C would be, would you say you are connected to this day to where you are born and raised? If not, why? Which, I've kind of gotten the impression that it's A, it's the former, but there's nothing wrong with that. So what would you say? Yeah.
I'm still very connected. Like I love Vienna. I'm really happy to live here. I consider myself extremely lucky to be born here. Because, dude, I mean, there are so many shitholes on this planet. Not shitholes because they are bad people there or something, but looking at how economy kind of decides your way of life, I'm very, very, very fucking lucky to be born in a city that takes so good care of its people.
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
So the original question 4, are you a gearhead? Current setup, dream setup.
Um,
And therefore the pain comes out.
yes. I'm not. Yes, like yeah. In German we have a word called Jein, which is a mix of ja and now, which is basically like yes, no. I'm a gearhead in the sense that I don't want to sound like shit. So and looking at how much effort you had to put into bass like 10 years ago to not sound like shit, I was a gearhead, but thanks to Dark Glass, I have a very, very convenient way of setting up my rig. And my current setup basically is I have 2 Dark Glass pedals that I use. One is for one is B7K that I use as a preamp. Then I have a Microtubes X7, which I use as a distortion pedal, and in between I just put no, how does it called, a compressor that kind of makes it fine and neat. And yeah, besides that, I don't really use that much gear because we use an in-ear system, so I mostly go into direct output and just have everything on my ear, and we just have the same sound as the sound guy. My guitarist is a huge gearhead because he's building up his recording studio, and yeah, most of the stuff I got into was because of him. But yeah, I think there are way bigger gearheads than me. Like as I mentioned, Blue from Dysentery, you can nerd with him for hours. Like he loves that shit, and I also love to talk about it with him, but he's like way more into it than me. And also our as I said, my camera ginger, he's also a huge gearhead, and he also works for Focusrite.
Okay.
So he's really, really into it, and I love that stuff that like he provided us with a setup when we played in the UK 2 weeks ago, and he's just amazing on that end.
Cool.
Yeah, but I'm an average gearhead, you could say.
Are there any toys that you're looking to acquire in the future for your setup?
Like the dream setup. If I can choose freely, I would go with an Ampeg cap, like those little big SV, like these big 8 times 12-inch speaker caps. Those huge fucking boxes you see on stage on big stages, and topped off with a Dark Glass amp. then I would be fucking happy. And bass wise, I'm very happy with my LTD 5-string right now, which is a multi-scale, because we have like we're using a 30. I'm having so I have to use a 37-inch scale bass, which is huge because normally go like 45, 46. But the problem is that Mani at some point decided that we have to go in a tuning that also includes an octave between below E. So it's very, very fucking low. I think Enterprise Earth play on that low. And I just can't use a normal bass, which is just a pain in the ass for me because I can never borrow gear. But yeah, I think acquiring maybe a Dingwall, if they actually put out a bass that doesn't look like a fucking lollipop, then I would buy one. Then yeah. But I'm very happy with my ESP right now, so that's amazing. Yeah.
Badass. Question 5. What lessons have you learned as a person or a musician, and how do those lessons drive you? Or how could they apply to others trying to accomplish what you have so far?
I think maybe I don't always let it shine through, but I think being humble is one of the most important things in that, because no matter how good you think you played or how big, like as I said, we don't have a big community in Austria. There are people, but it's not as huge as it is, for example, in Germany, or I don't know, maybe South America even. But even though when you play good shows with a lot of people, with hundreds of people, you will still see that you're just a fucking stain on the carpet of the industry.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, it's just that I learned is I don't have to do things to prove myself, but just because I enjoy them. Yeah, that's what I learned from that.
Oh yeah. Question 5. Wait. Geez. Question 6. 5 character slots. Whether new favorite artists, albums, singles, or people that pushed Species to its final state.
Yeah. Like number one character, like number one person that's pushed Species to its final state is basically Mani, because if he didn't decide to go like full on full time doing that record and all that, and start working out stuff for us, we would have never been able to finish that. And besides that, like obviously all of us, like all my bandmates, I mean, that's obvious because otherwise it wouldn't be finished. But thinking of how much time we put into it while simultaneously have, like, dude, we got people, we have persons in the band that have families, obviously.
Yes.
And like our drummer built a house while we were on tour. So you gotta imagine that. Like, he started building a house like from scratch, from ground zero, you could say. He started building a house and then he went fuck off 10 days for a tour with us. And also, you know, that's a lot of commitment, and I think that's very important to that. But looking at what the question is actually aiming at, so I think Beneath the Massacre are a huge influence for us, and I think that also kind of gives, not necessarily that on a technical level, but on this vibe it gives us, because I think listening to our stuff is restless.
Yes.
It's very the whole time. You're getting pushed through, and even though when it gets a bit low, like it gets a bit calmer or slower, it still is very heavy. And I think that's a big part from Beneath the Massacre.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's hard, because like we obviously when Lorna Shore released Immortal, I think we also understood that how we want, like, we also found out that we like other stuff, like that we are not just living for the Cannibal Corpse way of music, you could say. Like, we just figured out, hey, if we actually just practiced more, and got into more of the nitty gritty with atmosphere and everything, you can reach this
new
heaviness.
heights.
Yeah, you can not only new heights, but also this thing that, as I said earlier, Mani or we all just want to always aim for heaviness. It always needs to be heavy on a certain level, and thinking that an atmosphere can be heavy as well really pushed it forward, I think. And yeah, I think also besides that, I think people like that booked us. People like Lucas from Stillberg that invited us to Death Feast. Then I don't know, Ronnie from Vienna, who does great shows for us. The bands that we play with kind of pushed us forward, because every time we play a show with someone, we learn something new. We just figured out, hey, fuck, we could do it like that. And yeah, I think that's I don't think that's 5 character slots, but it's basically we're besides me, everyone is a bit introverted to a degree.
Yes.
Like that's yeah.
So it'll take some spice and enthusiasm to get them on the show too.
yeah. Oh, one more thing I really have to say. One person that really pushed Species to the final state, also is an obvious one, but I think it was a really good decision to take him in, was Miguel from Demigod Recordings.
Okay.
And Demigod Recordings did other stuff like Embrace Your Punishment, or K9, or even the biggest one maybe from its studios, Analepsy.
Yes. Sweet.
And it was just a fucking right decision, because I love the sound he put on. And that kind of, like, listening to his mixes was, for me, started, like, I hate my own music. But
he made me hate it less.
he just really made me enjoy it, because I was like, oh fuck, we could sound like that. Okay, now let's see where we're going. Yeah, but yeah, I'm not part of the writing process because of that anymore, because I criticize everything.
Gotcha.
And I'm good at coming up with stuff, where if you give me a concept, but seeing where the idea of someone is heading, I'm very bad at it. So yeah,
fair enough. Okay, cool. So now we can conclude, basically the last question of part 1, because apparently 2 hours into the session, we're only about to be done with part 1. What do members of Pray for Pain do for fun to connect outside of musical creation to you? Like, what's your opinion on that?
What we do, personally, I'll do a lot of gaming. I really enjoy gaming. Like, that's my favorite way to calm down. Like, just, turning on YouTube, playing. Currently, I'm playing V Rising, but I used to be a huge WoW player years ago when I was 14. I spent hours on that, so gaming was always a big factor for me. The others are more sporty. Like Manny is, he's really into gym fitness, but he discovered yoga and yogurt. He discovered yogurt. He discovered yoga.
An excellent snack for bodybuilding.
Yeah, exactly. No, he discovered yoga, but he also was always into heavy weightlifting, which also got me going for a while now.
Okay.
Alco is also very sporty. He also does a lot of weightlifting and cycling and spending time with his family and his dogs. And Andy also is basically he likes to spend time with friends and families and all that.
Yes.
And going to concerts. I'm less of a concert goer, by the way. I'm just really happy when I can be at home. So I do shows, I play shows, but it's like, for me, just okay, I'll do that. I'll enjoy it, and I enjoy doing that.
Yes.
But going outside is horrible.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, I think that would be a great way to conclude part 1. And part 2, we've covered a lot of stuff on this already, but just to kind of like rerun through it in case, it was too ADHD of a conversation in the first place. Part 2 would be disregarding Pray for Pain, but basically depersonalizing Kevin, turning him into Pray for Pain, as he's already, again, been one of the main voices, one of the main responders on social media for everything Pray for Pain. We start with question 1, which is probably one of the most fucking clickbait questions ever, but, depending on the band and depending on how far they've thought into it, it could be a pretty good question. How was the name Pray for Pain decided?
We always spoke about it in the beginning. I was the first name, Sadistic Perversion, sucked ass. And I think Pray for Pain is on one hand, it's just from the phonetics of it, like the sound of it just is better, because it could just go like but I think it's also a bit, if you want to be very pathetic to a degree, I think you can say that it's basically how the music is written, because it's always about this restlessness, about this. I don't want to make music that makes you feel comfortable, or that makes you feel at ease. I just want music that No,
Yeah,
just your sentence, mate.
Sorry. You want to make music that compels people to constantly move like ants.
Yeah, I just want to make music that makes people want to hurt people. That's my goal. Yeah.
And therefore you pray for pain.
Yeah, exactly.
What separates Pray for Pain from other bands? Like, I can't even really figure out a genre for Pray for Pain. I would say it's
no fucking clue myself.
Brutal death metal.
I was thinking about calling it modern brutal death metal, but because for me, brutal death metal, we're definitely not brutal death metal if you think of it in the classic sense, like, I don't know, Stanotaph, for example. Because brutal death metal is all like that's just it. That's like the whole show. It's cool. It's a bit exhausting for me to watch for longer in live shows. It's always impressive for me what the guys are playing.
Right.
But we are taking a more rhythmic approach to it, groovy approach to it. And I think that's why it's very, very fucking hard to just decide a genre for that, because it's a mix of everything.
I mean, if I honestly, I could easily compare Pray for Pain to bands like Waking the Cadaver. Disentomb is another one of them.
Disentomb is a very good comparison, I think, because Disentomb also has this technical stuff and very restful stuff, but also very groovy parts.
Yes, so most likely like Groove Death or some shit like that. But I like that. Nonetheless, it makes you want to groove. Okay, it makes you want to move and groove, and that's what's important.
I mean, the guys from the Death Feast just announced as a slamming deathcore, which is like, yeah, to a degree, why not? It's fine.
Which band?
Now the Death Feast, the festival we're playing in August, they announced us as slamming deathcore.
Oh, okay.
And they were like, it's fine for me, because like, yeah, to a degree it's right, because those breakdowns that we're using and how we use them, that's definitely deathcore elements. But the riffs in between are just way more brutal death.
Right. All the slam enthusiasts having a fucking aneurysm right now. They're like, no, it's slam or whatever.
Dude, I shit you not, there was a guy on Instagram because we posted a Slam Worldwide, like a reel in collaboration with Slam Worldwide, where it's just a fucking meme. And this guy was so nuts because I just called our genre death metal. And he was like, that's not death metal. Don't you know your own fucking genre, Slam Worldwide? And I just went, I was like, what is he having a tantrum about? And then he was like, he changed the comment or something. And I was like, dude, you just called it death metal. No, exactly. He said that's death metal. Don't you know it? Don't you know that you normally should post slam? At Slam Worldwide, and then he changed it to call it that's not death metal. And I was like, dude, I replied to my brother.
Make up your mind.
Yeah, like I replied to him like, my brother in Christ. You just called it death metal 5 minutes ago. And then he was like, I don't know. He was just very fucking mad. And he even made a fucking story about us on his Instagram, ranting about us not being proper death metal in his opinion. I was like, hey, cool, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, probably Groove Death. I think that's a pretty fun, easy label. So
maybe
we'll just go with Groove Death until
we have new information on that.
yeah. So I think now, despite you kind of like talking about Cadaver as well, let's go ahead and go under the skin of Species a little bit here. I know you're not the primary lyrical writer, and like if you want, we can even have Andy on later. But
actually, I do most of the lyrics. It's
I feel like an ass now.
No, it's the thing is, like as I said, I'm very bad with finding new stuff or coming up with new stuff, but I'm very good at taking an idea and remodeling it into something proper. And so what we do is that the artists just come up with lyric ideas, like the Cadaver. The idea from that comes from Andy, and I just put it into a proper form, into a lyrical form.
Gotcha.
Because I have the best English in the band, and it's because I do the most of the talking, so I know a lot of how you can use the sentences. But yeah, from about Species, I think the whole concept was because that's what you already introed yourself, like this thing with looks like a hollowed version of Earth, and this body morphing what is it called how is it called xenomorphs, this xenomorph tree that is there, which was done by Lordigan Designs. who is also from Portugal, just his demigod recordings, and also did
Hey.
he also did the artworks for Analepsy before and for Embrace Your Punishment, right? And Species, if you want to like make a very, very dreamy thing to it, or if you want to make it a concept album, basically Species, the 4 songs are encapsulating the reasons why humanity fell in first place. So there was this whole thing of endless consumption. New era is a new era of suffering, the first song.
Oh yeah.
Is about wars getting passed on from one generation to the next, and how it's just senseless killing without any given reason or any imminent reason, and people just keep doing that because of a tradition, and how tradition can drive us into death. Right. And heinous. Is about how you have, it's basically a criticism of Christianity, which is not to, it's not very innovative to criticize Christianity in metal, but the thing is that it's just about how you follow the guidelines of the guy that lived thousands of years ago, and how this whole thing is like, how this whole construct of religion is the is kind of I'm sorry, I'm lacking words here. It's kind of like absorbing the whole individual of a person into an endless void that you just become a part of, and how you just give yourself up into this void. And Nietzsche talked about this void, which is also like this basis for nihilism. And there are two, if you want to summarize it very simple, there are 2 approaches to nihilistic views, which is one that is I don't matter, because we all don't matter, so it doesn't make sense to do anything, and this is basically just a very depressed, edgy view on it. But Nietzsche kind of defined it that by acknowledging that God is that, and that we don't matter, or that God doesn't matter, we also have the power to define what we can do, and nothing is pre-written. And basically that's what heinous is about.
Okay.
And Forsaken are kind of from a view like that, because what is it, Cadaver, for example.
Yes.
Is mostly about, like, I'm a vegan for 5 years now, and I was just wondering, I'm really into animal rights and all that, and I also do charity shows here in Vienna. And we, it's the whole lyrics is just about how this unhinged consumption, and how we are taught to do so, and how we are taught that striving or aiming for endless consumption and economic power is just pressed into us. We'll just kind of, on one part, you will just kind of thrive on the suffering of weaker, maybe people who are wage slaves, as you say, as people call it, or whether you are an animal that just gets abused for being a commodity, or gets treated as a commodity. And you can only thrive on their suffering, and at some point there is nothing left to exploit. And basically that's what the whole song is about. And I don't know if you watched the video where we all start throwing up and we vomit onto the table and all that. That's basically, on one hand, we just wanted to make a funny video. It was just about shits and giggles. It's just very trashy. It's me actually throwing up. Like, if you see that, that's actually from the bottom of my heart. But it's also like, if you look at some things in the video and you look at it in a more serious way, then you can see that there is a lot of criticizing on that, and that mirrors the lyrics that we wrote for it.
Cool.
So yeah, it's a lot of stuff like that on Species, even though it's just 4 songs.
Yeah.
Forsaken is just like the song was basically this people just discovering this earth that is hollow. And yeah, honestly, in Forsaken there was not much thought behind it. It was just initially, as a project title, it was called We Are Back, because that was the first song we wrote, and I was like, yeah, we have to do some lyrics on that, let's get cracking.
Fair
So
enough.
yeah.
Okay. Well, in that case, after conducting a lobotomy for Species, and after us concluding the first half of the podcast session, talking about bands that inspired all of the members in Pray for Pain, what distinguishes Species from other iconic records, or in this case EPs, relevant to Death Groove in your own personal opinion?
I think that we have a very, very chill, like we have this formula of, yeah, it's technical, but it should never be too much. Like if we would have let Mani, from his early stages of writing, if we would have just let him go like that, it would have been something like Beneath the Massacre 2.0. And we didn't want to go for that because we love Beneath the Massacre, but it's just too stressful most of the time.
Yeah.
And so I think what we do is that we take this feeling you get from listening to those very, very technical releases, but without overwhelming everyone. Like we give you that break, but the break is actually the next slamming part or the next heavy part that you just need to go throw shit around.
Yeah.
And I think it's, if you want me to, like, if I say like what's the difference to other or what distinguishes Species, is that I think it's elaborated on every level, but not that far that it just gets too out of hand. And I think you can get a hang of it very easily. It can be catchy. There is a good composition of all different elements that people like, but on a very, very very, very consumable level, so to say.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, question 4 in part 2 would be how and why did Species become an EP, as the question says, album instead of EP?
Yeah.
How did Species become an EP instead of an album, whether from a creative sense or a marketing sense?
Yeah. No, it was just we had an album planned, and then we said like, it's been 6 years almost now.
Yeah. Let's see if people still care.
No, it was like we didn't even care about the people. Like we loved every feedback that we get, but we were just like, please, we need to release something. We want to make, we want to finish that shit. We have like way more songs waiting in the back already, which we're working on an album for next or like ideally I plan to make an album for next year.
Okay. Cool.
But
Boys are back in town.
Yeah. No, but it's like we just holy shit, we just wanted to have this EP out because we couldn't bother putting so much energy into it anymore.
Yes.
So we said we just realized if we would keep going with an album, we would know that we would rewrite the whole shit again. Yeah. It wasn't really a marketing decision or something. It was just, please, for the love of God, please just let us be. please, we wanted the songs to go away from us finally.
Yeah,
So,
separate yourself from like having to invest in studio and financially into something like so small as well, because like EPs, you know, they don't really push as much as albums do. That's just the bottom line. So it's like we might as well
doesn't love them so much.
Yeah, we might as well get out this bag of chips before we bring on the burgers. Okay. Question 5, and this is to conclude the session after basically probably closer to 3 hours now, really. Briefly discuss the future of Pray for Pain / shout out to any bands or people if applicable. So
future, we're trying, honestly, we're really trying to push us out there, because we know that we have, it's not that we think we're great or something or amazing, but I think we know that we can deliver a cool live performance, and for us it's just about playing live. We don't really care about making money or anything. It's honestly like most of the time I just go, I don't want to have any money. I just want my costs to be covered ideally, and that's it. If that happens, then I'm the happiest fucking bunny you can imagine. But I don't know. Yeah, we just want to. We know that that we can do something. We know that we don't think that we are genre redefining or anything, but I think we can be a proper live experience that people can have fun to. We already go to shows ourselves. I love going to festivals and meeting the people, especially in Europe and especially on Death Feast. So shout out to Death Feast. If you don't know Death Feast open air, definitely check it out if you're from Europe, because that shit is amazing. It's like around 1,000 people, and it always feels like a fucking family gathering. And since you already mentioned Waking the Cadaver, they're also playing this year.
Gotcha.
And they have already played 5 years ago when we played there. And there was this huge thing when Waking the Cadaver, when Extermination Dismemberment had their set, and they always cover Baby Killer. So for that cover, they also invited Lucas from Stillbirth, Don from Waking the Cadaver, and Sven from Corpse on stage. And then as a four singers covered Baby Killer by Devourment, while 1,000 people were just completely losing their shit. And for me, Death Feast is just one of the most amazing festivals you can attend. I love it.
Oh yeah.
So shout out to the Death Feast. Shout out to all the people that are supporting us. And by the way, we're dropping merch next week. So you can definitely, finally. Holy shit! That we have the first time. It's the first time we actually like the merch that we have. Because we finally got some hoodies, some shorts, some new shirts, and all that. So if you want some, grab some of that. I hope not too many people do it at one time, because I have to go to the post office to send that shit, and I also have a job, so I have a 40-hour job of the week, so I want some free time. Also shout out. I think everybody would say shout out, like everybody from the band would say shout out to our families, and our better halves, because they put up with so much shit. Because we waste so much time on our band, and we put so much time and effort into that that everybody around us just sometimes has the feeling that everybody around us plays a secondary role. And so also one more thing, one big shout out to a person I really I'm happy that he's in the scene, is Marius. Do you know Spawn of Disgust?
Ooh,
it's a beatdown band.
I think I've seen them a couple times. Like
it's a beatdown band from Germany, and he's the drummer of it. But he's also the guy behind Crowdforce Booking, and he does tours. For example, for Anal Epilepsy, and he also did one for Cerebral Incubation in Europe. And I think he's one of the most influential guys in my development, because he brought me into the veganism thing, and he also brought me in contact with a lot of people, and he's a very, very good friend of mine, and I really want to do a shout out, because I don't know, he probably wouldn't watch me 3 hours talking, because he has already enough of the 10 minutes of me. But yeah, he's a really cool guy, and I think if we had more people like him in the scene, that everything would be way, way, way better.
Oh yeah.
And thank you also to you. for the invitation, and thank you for giving us the platform. And I hope we can also get some people over to you and watch the whole podcast if they're interested in 3 hours of me doing ADHD mumbling. Yeah, thank you.
Of course. And honestly, again, like I mentioned at the very beginning, it is simply such an honor to have such a full circle moment. Like, dude, pre-beard, pre-bushy hair. Like, dude, I was just like, yeah, this band is really sick. Why is no one talking about this band? Oh, yeah, it's probably because they're from fucking Austria. But nonetheless, such a full circle moment, such a accomplishment, really, for me and this podcast alike. I can only hope that in the future, as we manage to convince the other members who are more introverted to tell their story from their perspective and talk everything that they know and feel, and all the negative and positive emotions regarding Pray for Pain. I can only hope
if you buy our album, you're also paying for pain at that point. So
exactly,
fair enough.
Exactly, paying for pain.
Yeah, it's like an SM dojo,
right? But I do believe that will be a great way to conclude this podcast session. Thank you to everybody around the world who might be listening to the world's one and only world-dominating counterculture music history podcast, brought to you by Sean Cross YT, and the Orc King, Finn the Orc King, when he does jump on here. We're planning on doing a lot of stuff in the near future, as far as introducing new personalities, providing new personalities platform on this show, having them as hosts. But for those who may be listening, I know we have one fan. If you know who you are, yeah, that's most likely going to be a thing. But just like the Great Eternal Music Machine, people, let's keep cranking, and we will see you all in the next one. Later.
Bye-bye.